In the United States, many areas deal with the issue of potable water. Potable water is known as clean drinking water found from wells, natural springs, or rivers. It is usually treated many times and thoroughly to ensure it is clean of bacteria, microorganisms, toxic chemicals, and deadly viruses. Without this cleaning, it can be extremely dangerous, and unfortunately, some areas in the United States do not have access to this clean, potable water. As we all know, water is a necessity to stay alive. Water is important because it helps us maintain and balance our body fluids. It flushes waste, it fights illnesses, and improves our blood oxygen circulation. Also, even if you go 3 days without drinking water, you will die of dehydration, which is something no one wants to do. Unfortunately, while most people in the United States do not deal with this problem, some people do, and it has a major impact on the people living in these areas. For example, Newark, New Jersey, and Flint, Michigan are key examples that exemplify these dangers of unhealthy drinking water. The stakeholders from these areas experience very negative impacts from this water that include health, money, and the reputation to their area.
Flint, Michigan was one location that had the problem of contaminated water. Flint, Michigan had been relying on water from Lake Huron from the Detroit Water Department for about 50 years. The quality was good, but there's a lot of unhappiness about the affordability. It was extremely expensive, among the most expensive water rates in the country. It decided, under state-appointed emergency management, that it was going to switch to a new water department. And until that new water department was built, it was going to temporarily use the Flint River as its drinking water source. The problems were that treating river water is vastly more complex than treating lake water. The upgrades to the water plant were insufficient to deal with that. The water was not treated with something called corrosion control, and this is something that is added to the water to help keep the old, ill-maintained water lanes from breaking down. Without it, the metals from the pipes, including lead, contaminated the water coming from the taps. So some of the stakeholders in this situation are residents, and they had health effects because of the situation. So even before the problems with lead came on the radar, there was a series of bacterial issues with the water. One of these was a huge outbreak of Legionnaire's disease, and this disease actually killed people. With lead, with the problem of lead coming in, the frightening part is that there is no amount of lead that is safe. So this problem was especially big for children. Children are much more susceptible to it because their developing bodies absorbed 5 times more lead than adults, and its toxic effects can range from antisocial, aggressive behavior, stunted growth, and anemia. A video from CBS goes more in depth.
It's especially harmful to children, and it is irreversible. Dr. John LaPook has more on this.
The parents of children in Flint, Michigan have good reason to be worried.
There's real danger that the injury is going to be permanent and lifelong in them.
Dr. Philip Landrigan is Dean of Global Health at Mount Sinai School of Medicine. He's been studying the effects of lead since the 70s.
The problem here is that no level of lead is safe. Even low levels of lead, especially if exposure to low levels continues over many months, is going to cause some degree of brain damage to at least some of the children who are exposed. And that's a big deal.
Exposed children are at risk for a number of problems, including lower IQ scores, developmental delays, and behavioral issues such as attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. Even after lead exposure stops, the effects can last for years or even be permanent. In Flint, Michigan, a major challenge will be identifying which children are at risk, then tracking them for many years for evidence of injury.
These children are going to be injured for life. They're going to need remedial education. They're going to need educational enrichment programs. They're kids who may be prevented from functioning at their full level.
There are no known effective drugs to reverse the developmental damage caused by lead. Something called chelation therapy can remove lead from the body, but so far it has not been helpful in treating the behavioral or neurological problems caused by lead. Dr. John LaPook.
For adults, the effect can be miscarriages and reproductive problems over time. Unfortunately, all these effects are incurable. So after the crisis, there was a result in a lack of trust in officials and in the water, even though it was switched back to its original source. Many residents refused to drink the tap water. This led to once a week, hundreds of cars had to line up to get bottled water from the Greater Holy Temple Church of God in Flint, and that occurred for 5 years straight, and it's still occurring. So another stakeholder are the government officials. At the start of this crisis, officials denied anything was wrong, and after this situation, there was a loss of trust from the residents. On top of that, former Michigan Governor Rick Snyder was charged with 2 counts of willful negligence for his role in the Flint water crisis. Another stakeholder would be the state of Michigan. Michigan has settled claims for $600 million for the residents of Flint, Michigan. Some residents say, though, that no money is enough for going through hell. And there's also a 2017 settlement that made the state of Michigan responsible and pay $87 million worth of pipe replacement, adding to that $600 million. And another possible stakeholder is Indiana. Indiana has passed a new law that mandates schools to test for lead contamination because of the situation in Flint, Michigan. So this situation has possible solutions, and almost all these solutions have already been implemented. But anyways, one solution is switching back to Lake Huron, and according to CBS, the city switched back to their original water supplier in 2015. Another solution is replacing pipes. According to the city of Flint, 9,912 lead pipes and galvanized steel pipes that contain flakes of lead have been removed and replaced as of December 25th, 2020. And this comes from the aforementioned $87 million that Michigan had to invest in replacing pipes. Another solution is compensating the residents. Like stated earlier, Michigan has made a settlement for $600 million for the citizens of Flint who were adversely affected by the lead-tainted water. But like stated earlier again, a lot of citizens say it's not enough. And finally, another solution is to provide citizens with water filters. This solution would give peace of mind to those that still don't trust the tap water. Although this solution would be quite costly to the state of Michigan, adding to the already high cost of the whole situation, it could be worth it. Thank you.
Lead-saturated water seems to be a recurring theme in the United States, a country that prides itself on its advanced infrastructure and technology. However, last year, around 30 million Americans resided in a part of a country where water toxicity levels were above the legal limit that was set by the government. Who knows how many millions are unknowingly being affected by toxic chemicals in our potable or drinking water. Newark, New Jersey, much like Flint, Michigan, is facing a water crisis that draws eerily similar comparisons to the situation in Flint. A quote from Newark citizen Deborah Salters gives us some insight as to how citizens are reacting to the crisis. We're not Flint. We're worse than Flint. This is in reference to the extremely high levels of lead that were found in the water. In early 2016, Newark Public Schools shut off the drinking water to 30 schools after water tests came back positive for elevated lead levels in the water, and the legal limit of the lead is about 15 parts per billion. Since then, the lead crisis has snowballed, and the situation is still not under control almost 5 years later.
The video from CBS gives more detail.
I was extremely upset. Extremely upset.
The water coming from Yvette Jordan's tap looks pure, but this year she learned it contained lead levels nearly 3 times federal rules, something she says she didn't expect because of what she'd been hearing from city officials.
Your water's fine. Everything's fine.
That's what you heard from the city?
Yes. Through several robocalls, through a press conference from our mayor, everything is fine.
But the city is now telling residents in some areas their tap water is not fine. It contains lead above federal guidelines. They're handing out these water filters and telling parents their babies and young children should not drink the water. Mayor Raz Baraka says the problem comes from old water pipes found in some neighborhoods that leach lead into the drinking water.
You have some homes.
The impacts that lead can have on adults are extensive. Adults can suffer from heart problems, declining kidney function, as well as reproductive problems, especially for pregnant women. However, the effects on adults go beyond what we can physically see and measure. To avoid drinking lead-contaminated water, adults sometimes have to resort to buying bottled or packaged water, which is not always provided by the city or government in a crisis situation, even though the city is required to provide the residents with free water. Financially, the toll taken is sometimes just as stressful as the physical toll. When it comes to lead poisoning and drinking lead-contaminated water, children have absolutely the most to lose. Children can suffer from behavioral issues, a lowered IQ, hearing loss, and anemia, which is lower oxygen flow throughout the body, among other issues as well. Behavioral issues can evolve into aggression and violence when children reach young adulthood, leading to criminal problems and increased crime rates. Lawmakers have had a tough time accepting and reacting to the lead crisis in Newark's drinking water. However, the city of Newark has been working on replacing nearly 18,000 lead pipes that transfer the water throughout the city. Not only has the city been required to hand out free drinking water to residents, but the cost also to replace the lead pipes is astronomical, with one official stating that so far the city has made improvements to the water system with costs upward of $160 million. So how do we solve this issue? The city of Newark has already stated that they have spent $160 million to replace the lead pipes that are at the heart of the issue. However, why did it take 4 years for the city of Newark and the state of New Jersey to take serious action when the affected citizens are at risk every single day from drinking this lead-contaminated water? One solution to this problem that the city of Newark and the state of New Jersey is that the city of Newark and the state of New Jersey could have accumulated more funds towards replacing the lead pipes of Newark faster, rather than trying to deny that there was ever a problem. And once a problem was found, it still took a very long time to replace the pipes, and the problems still exist almost 5 years later. However, the drawback of this solution is severe. As states and local governments note declining revenue, along with the huge expenditure, like replacing lead pipes, the government could have to release workers in public service, such as firefighters or even police officers. And this is just not a feasible option, especially in Newark, which was notorious for crime and violence, and is now notorious for toxic water. Another possible solution is water filters, and the city of Newark is actually actively trying to establish and use more water filters. The filters that they commonly use block at least 97.5% of lead contamination. This seems to be the simplest and the easiest solution for the city of Newark to implement. However, reports show that nearly 1/4 of the filters are improperly installed, or that those who have had them installed neglected to effectively and safely maintain them. Another problem with this solution is the lack of citizens with sinks that are compatible to these lead filters.
To conclude, it is important to have safe and clean water to drink. Having too much contamination in the water can lead to lifelong health defects and even death. So keeping up on safe, regulated water pipes is critical in the lives of not only citizens in Newark and Flint, but also those in close neighboring cities. These examples allow us to realize how much of a necessity it is to have healthy water to drink, It also allows us to see how important it is to tackle these issues as quickly as possible to reduce any further contamination in not only these cities, but every city. Over 30 million Americans drink lead-contaminated water, and that number nearly doubles when you take into account the total number of Americans that lack access to clean drinking water every day. Making sure that solutions given are affordable to the citizens is also a must when solving the problem. Water safety has become a bigger issue in recent years, and it is key to ensure that the safety of something so valuable in our everyday lives. In our discussion, we will be talking about an issue that hits close to home. In Indianapolis, Indiana, there have been issues of contaminated drinking water.